Good evening. The League of Women Voters, the Hamptons, Shelter Island, and the North Fork, and CTV apologize for the fact that we could not get this recorded live as it was supposed to be tonight. There was a problem with YouTube, and we all know how Zoom and YouTube and how that works. So in order to kind of move things along a little more quickly, since people have other obligations, we're going to go right into the questions. Now, these are the two candidates for the first Assembly District. Tommy John Schiavone who is a Democratic candidate, and Stephen Kiley, who is the Republican candidate. I'm Judy Roth. I'm the moderator, and Eileen Mercer is our timer.
Hello.
So I will just go to the format so that the candidates are aware, which they have been before, but the order of speaking has been determined by a coin toss. Each candidate has a 2-minute opening statement, and then we'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question in a rotating order. Then they also have a 1-minute rebuttal, which they will let me know by raising their hand, not the hand on Zoom. And then each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. And Eileen will hold up, as you saw her doing, holding up a 2-minute sign, a 1-minute sign, a 30-second sign, and a stop sign. And the stop sign means stop, okay? So according to the rules and the coin toss, Mr. Schiavone will make his opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tommy John Schiavone, and I am a councilman in the town of Southampton in my second term, and I am running for the New York State Assembly. I am a husband, a father, a 32-year teacher, and I was born and raised here on the East End of Long Island, as were my parents and my grandparents on both sides. I know the issues here. I've seen them, and I've been around here, and some of the main issues that we are looking at on the East End that face us are water quality issues, namely surface water and groundwater. We get our drinking water from the ground. We have no viable alternative to replace that source of drinking water out here on Long Island. Open space preservation, farmland, forest land, education. We have a housing crisis out here on the East End, sustainability issues, transportation is a major issue out here, as well as public health issues like addiction and tick-borne illness and our mental health crisis that we are facing. And I have been working on these as a member of the town council on our boards of education, as well as on the village board as well. And I look forward to tonight's debate, or the presentation of candidates, so that we can flush a lot of these issues out and discuss them, so that the folks and our constituents know where we stand on all of these things. It's important. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this debate this evening and for putting it out there. It's too bad that it's not going live, but for the folks who are tuning in on CTV or online, it still is pertinent. So again, I look forward to our debate this evening and to address some of these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Kiley?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to the League for hosting this debate and the public for viewing it thereafter. We have a Yankee game tonight, so I'm thanking people who would have been here to share some time with us. But I'm running because I truly believe I am the right person at the right time. We're losing a 30-year representative who did a lot of good things for the East End, and we need someone qualified to replace him to make sure we are heard. Like Fred Deal, I'm a municipal attorney. I've been so for 20 years. I've represented 4 of the 5 towns in this district. I'm the current Shelter Island town attorney and a former Southampton, Southold, and Brookhaven assistant town attorney. I've also represented the villages of West Hampton Dunes and Greenport. Additionally, I'm part of the weekend and holiday arraignment group for the East End Justice Courts. In those roles, I've written, explained, and enforced laws, and that is exactly the skill set that is required for this position. I also have deep and vast local knowledge as I've lived in 3 of the 5 townships. I grew up spending summers and holidays with my grandparents in Sag Harbor, lived in Noyak, Hampton Bays, and I've lived in Mattituck for the past 16 years with my wife and 4 children. I've also represented clients in every township in the district. That being said, I'm also running at the right time. We are facing an overdevelopment crisis, which negatively impacts our drinking water, water bodies, and community character. And we have a governor who wants to add gasoline to the fire by trying to override local zoning to add housing. Through housing mandates where, for example, Southampton would have to allow to be built approximately 1,300 new homes every 3 years and allow as of right 50 units per acre on certain properties. But we are also becoming unsafe due to bail reform. For example, there is an impetus to steal cars, as we see here on the East End. I never thought I'd see the day that driving into Southampton Village, there'd be a sign, lock your cars, as grand theft auto is not bail eligible. They are arrested and they immediately walk out of court. I know how to reform bail reform to keep our families safe, and I will do so up in Albany. I look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Okay, so, and we'll be covering some of those issues in the questions. The first question goes to Mr. Schiavone. Our towns are drowning in traffic delays. There are committees and ideas everywhere, and some new ideas get tried, but sometimes fail because there isn't enough local funding to support them. As our assembly person, what ways do you think the state can help local communities such as ours?
Thank you for the question. That's an excellent question, particularly out here on the South Fork, but it also affects the North Fork as well. We have a traffic issue. Our roads have been under-engineered now for, I don't know, about 28 years. This is no secret to anyone, and it's not new. And as far as your representative in Albany, I would work with the DOT to reform some of our roads on the South Fork. It's very important that we maintain the look and feel of our communities, and our roads are a major part of that. But I have to say that as a councilman, I have been working on this very issue. I am the chair of a group called the Commuter Coalition. It's a combination of elected officials, superintendents of schools, and we have been working with the MTA to upgrade the services on the Long Island Railroad. We call it the South Fork Commuter Connection. It really is the Montauk branch that goes from Spionk to Montauk, and what we're trying to do is to get greater service on that rail link. And we were successful this year in the MTA's 5-year plan. We rallied, we pushed the MTA to include this, and they included the line item for upgrades for the South Fork Commuter Connection. There is some funding that is earmarked for this. There's going to be plans and some preparation for the signaling. And now that we have the line item, as you're a member of the New York State Assembly, I will work to fund that line so that we can create and build the new platforms that are needed in Spionk and Bridgehampton, and the sidings that are needed in Southampton as well as Amagansett, so we can have real train service, dependable train service, so that more people will use the South Fork Commuter Connection. Currently, we take about 400 people a morning over the Shinnecock Canal on that train, but as your representative in Albany, I will certainly work to increase that.
Mr. Kiley?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Tommy John's saying. We absolutely need more train service because our roads are packed, and we need more consistent train service, more times. But we also have to look at the MTA. The MTA is mismanaged, and we have to look at where there is waste, because we have to have adequate resources that are funding the train services on the South Fork. But we also can't forget about the North Fork. The North Fork, as Tom and John stated earlier, has a traffic problem of its own, and we need increased train services as well. And not only the train services, but we need increased bus service. We need mass transit opportunities on the East End. And we need to be able to get people to buy into bypassing sitting in traffic, taking mass transit, and being able to conveniently be brought from the train stations to their work. So whether or not we have to increase shuttles, we have to think outside the box and come up with some Uber type program, because not every office or job site is conveniently located where the buses are dropping people off. So we have to, expand that. But again, I think we're both on the same page on this.
Tommy John?
Yeah, I guess this would be a rebuttal, but not, it's really not a rebuttal because like Stephen said, we're saying the same thing. Absolutely, increasing service on the North Fork and revamping the Riverhead train station. I do believe that's an underutilized link there out to Greenport is key. And it should be noted that Southampton and East Hampton towns are the only towns in the state of New York that actually operate a bus service. The last loops are operated and maintained by those towns. And so once we get greater service and we can get more last mile service, we'll make a real dent in our traffic situation.
Okay. Well, since my second question was about the Long Island Railroad and the money that's just been suggested, not appropriated, we're going to move on. And Mr. Kiley, how will you support the development of affordable housing in the local area? How do the goals of open land and zoning conflict with the need to provide workforce housing in the area in which people work?
Okay, so I disagree with Tommy John on this. I don't think we have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis. And, I was fortunate to write the law for the Community Housing Fund and help draft the community housing plan for Shelter Island. And we can address the affordability issue without endangering our open space, without endangering woodlands, endangering wetlands, endangering our aquifer by building and high density complexes where you have septic systems that are going to put nitrates into the groundwater and flow out to the bays and kill our eelgrass, which kills our scallops. So, and this is what our foremost expert, Dr. Gobler, says. It's our major nitrate problem is attributable to the septic systems and fertilizers. But anyway, as far as affordability, I'd be for accessory apartments, providing grants for that, apartments above existing businesses, repurposing vacant commercial properties and make affordable housing in those structures. And then also manor houses, instead of, high density housing complexes, you have manor houses with 3 to 5 units in it. And I think that, we can really start addressing the affordable housing issue without destroying our community character and our environment.
Okay, Mr. Scavone?
I do believe it's a housing crisis. I am seeing our young people leaving this area. Even people who have jobs here find it difficult to impossible to find housing to raise their families on the North and South Fork. The median price for Southampton town is well over $1 million now, and that's a very steep lift for young people of any age and stature to afford. Now, I believe that we can address our housing crisis as well as our open spaces. I've worked as a Southampton town councilman to preserve thousands of acres of land. We have over 5,000 acres of land preserved in our community. Just a couple of months ago, we preserved 54 acres of farmland in Bridgehampton. And we do have options. I believe that a good use of mixed use housing in our downtown areas is a way to provide housing, as well as other kinds of housing initiatives. What we have done when we passed the Community Housing Fund, we created a project plan of directions where to go with our monies that we are receiving from the 0.5% transfer tax that was put on. We have started a first-time home buyers initiative, helping people purchase their own homes. We are giving no interest loans for accessory dwelling units. And we also have other options too, like affordability easements and disability easements as well, where the town will come in and purchase those easements off of living spaces so that people can live. We just did something in Sag Harbor where we purchased an affordability easement off of a 6-apartment building on Suffolk Street in Sag Harbor. It looks like a house. You know, you never know it's there, but it's 6 different units. We own those development rights. It's going to be affordable in perpetuity. So now that we have passed the Community Housing Fund, we have various options and tools in our toolbox to address this. We're dealing with a very strong market here, folks. It's going to be a challenge. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to rebut.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And listen, I feel for our locals and people that are employed here, but the problem is we can't give local preferences. So when Tommy John approves an 80-unit complex or a 50-unit complex, we have to open that up to the world, and we're going to be subsidizing regional housing problems. So I'm dead set against building our way out of this issue and constructing more high-density complexes, and that's just exactly what his plan has been as a town board member.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Rebuttal. In the town of Southampton, we have built 59 units. That's in the past 10 years. And the people who have filled those units have been from the 119 zip code. They have been from Southampton town and from East Hampton town, and then a handful have come from Brookhaven. These are people who live here, who work here. And as far as the 50-unit initiative that was brought up, that was an initiative for disabled veterans as well as workforce housing. It was a difficult vote. I've taken many votes, and I was the lone vote on that, and I would do it again. But as far as, you know, I don't believe that is the way, and nor do I believe that we're going to build our way out of this at all, to quote Fred Thiel. We have to do a lot of different things, and I've laid out 3 or 4 different options where the town of Southampton, and I should note that other towns as well, are going to be initiating, you know, programs to satisfy housing out here. And by the way, it's not just a housing problem. You know, the people who work and live here, they're from West and they're on our roads. I would like people living here who work here. Thank you.
Can I rebut?
Okay, I thought so.
Am I allowed to rebut?
Yes, yes.
Okay. But that begs the question, if you build more houses, isn't that going to generate more traffic? So we are very restricted on the East End. We have a fragile aquifer. The more housing you build, the more nitrates go in the water. And as Tommy John said earlier, we have a very fragile aquifer and we can't play games with it. And Dr. Gobler says more housing equals more nitrates equals toxic water. So we got to be mindful of that.
Okay. All right. So that was interesting answers on housing. And I expect there'll be some on the next question, which we'll start with Mr. Schiavone. The Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act is the most important environmental measure since the Pine Barrens Act, which was in 1993. It passed the Assembly and the Senate and will be on the ballot as a referendum. Where do you stand on this issue? And what more needs to be done to protect our water resources?
Water quality is one of the greatest challenges that we have out here, like we've already said. Last year, when the Suffolk County Legislature was debating this, I went to the Suffolk County Legislature. They had me up there for about 20 minutes. But before I went to that podium, I took a Peconic County flag and put it over the podium, and I represented the East End. It's clear that the towns of Southold, Shelter Island, East Hampton, and Southampton overwhelmingly support initiatives for environmental water quality protection. As far as the Water Quality Restoration Act, I fully support it. I went to the county. I I am going to vote for it as well. That, in conjunction with our water quality monies from our community preservation funds, we can make a real dent in preserving water quality, both groundwater and surface water. I'm proud to say, as a Southampton Town Council member, we are creating the first sewer district on the East End since the 1970s. We've expanded sewer districts in West Hampton. They linked up to the county sewer supply system at the airport, and they had to do a lot to do that. In addition, in the village of Sag Harbor, we are helping fund the expansion of their sewer district as well. So mitigating nitrogen, we've already been working on it as far as that is concerned. As a town councilman, I sit as a commissioner of a water district in Hampton Bays. We have 7,000 customers in that water district, and we have had to purchase. We are upgrading the system, and we have purchased a granularly activated carbon filter to filter out PFOs and PFOAs that were being pumped into that district before I was on the board. Now, Hampton Bays Water District, they are drinking the cleanest water on Long Island. I'm proud of my work as a commissioner. I'm proud of my work as a councilman.
Mr.
And we
Patrick?
take it to Albany. I'm sorry.
I agree with Tommy John. This is a great referendum. It'll amount to about 12 cents for every 100 in sales tax. It's desperately, desperately needed. What we need to use the money for on the East End is these IA systems. They need to get into the ground immediately. And we have to be able to subsidize people putting them in the ground. We have to offer local grants and to augment, the state money and the county money that's available. However, sewage treatment facilities are not necessarily the answer on the East End. And as Tommy John's aware, he's getting sued by Riverhead regarding the sewage treatment facility that he wants to put in Riverside because it's located right next to a school. So the issue we have with this high-end industrial solutions is just like a square peg in a round hole. What we need to do is get these IA systems in the ground ASAP, and this would be a great tool for that.
Oh, okay, and only one rebuttal each. My mistake. I
thought.
No, you can rebut this.
Oh, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, IA systems on the East End, absolutely. We're going to need to have those. There are locations where sewer districts actually make more sense than IA systems. And we need to keep in mind that when we put a STP plant in place and a sewage district in place, this is a 150-year infrastructure. It costs a lot of money, but it's going to be there for a long time. As far as Riverside goes, we have procured $45 million to install a system. In addition to that, there are 3 trailer parks that are going to be put on this system. Currently, they have antiquated septic systems that's going right into the Peconic estuary. And the reason the town of Riverhead is suing the town of Southampton is because they claim that they didn't know about it. They probably were, and they wanted the town of Southampton to take the county flow from the jail and the court systems, and they themselves didn't even contact the county. We're going to win that suit, and we're going to put this system in, and it's going to be the first one in 30 years on the eastern end of Long Island, and we're proud to do it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to a different topic, and it's going to start with Mr. Kiley. Misinformation is widespread on social media sites such as Instagram, TikTok, and X and Facebook, places where many people, particularly young people, get all of their news. Concurrently, our schools are examining a variety of plans in order to limit cell phone use in classrooms and other school venues to mitigate the negative impact of social media on learning and also social behavior. Sag Harbor has banned cell phones. The governor is weighing statewide options on this topic. Where do you stand on this issue?
This is one area I wholeheartedly agree with the governor on. It's a public mental health crisis, social media, and schools and apps and social media being available during school hours is an atrocity. Kids should be able to detach from their phones for a period of time while they're in school and while they're learning. So I'm fully supportive of that measure across the board.
Okay, Mr. Schiavone?
As a 32-year teacher, I support this as well. You know, I was a teacher while cell phones were being developed and, you know, when they were first in class and in schools. And I have to say, it is difficult for a school to compete with the engineers that are behind those apps. They are not designed for the betterment of our young people. They are designed to keep the young people's eyes on those applications, on the apps, and it is causing problems. I mean, it's a whole new dimension of social construct that, you know, that we didn't have to deal with when I was younger. It is contributing to the mental health crisis in the United States, and our schools are for learning. Now, as far as how to implement this, I believe that each individual school district should have a latitude to determine how they want to direct cell phones in schools. I know that parents want their young people, want their children to have cell phones, and I completely understand that. But it's the schools that know the communities, know the parents, know the kids best. So whether it's like a cell phone caddy in the front of class, or if they want to ban them entirely, that is going to be up to the Board of Education, the administrators, and the teachers of those particular school districts. Now, I think this is an important part of home rule where our individual municipalities, a school district is a municipality, that they get to have that say. And I don't mind necessarily the state being the heavy here, making, you know, the law, like saying that we should not have you know, cell phones in school, and, you know, make Albany the bad guy, if you will, but then, you know, have the schools determine how that would work.
Okay. Was that a hand? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to rebut that. Like Article 9 of the New York State Constitution dictates home rule, and it allows, you know, different townships and municipalities. I disagree that, you know, school districts get all the rights of a township, but lets them dictate their property and affairs. But to me, this is clearly not a local issue. This is a mental health crisis, and there is not one good reason why these cell phones belong in school. So again, I believe that, you know, I hear what he's saying about a caddy. The rule should just be no use of the cell phone in school, and then they can pick it up from their locker after school for extracurriculars.
Okay. Well, why don't I follow up with a mental health issue for Mr. Kiley? Access to mental health services on the East End are very difficult to access. Do you believe there are things the state can do to help improve people's ability to get help when they need it? Concurrently, can you speak about the addiction issues we encounter in young people?
This is a great question, and one that needs to be addressed. The East End is a wasteland for mental health, you know, counseling. We need dedicated funds to have a more robust mental health service on the East End. My wife is the director of student health counseling for Suffolk Community College, and I hear the horror stories that she tells me about the kids. I hear things from my own children going to school. So we need the state to step in to provide funding. We need funding on the East End, just like we need funding for transportation. We need funding for mental health, and it's equally as important. We also need the ability to enhance online counseling and education for our teachers, and allow the schools to have more robust mental health counseling in-house. And as far as addiction, we really need to step up our game on that as well. And some of it comes down to enforcement on the criminal side. We need to get serious about drug dealers and death by dealer, and try to get stronger with having these drugs come into our communities.
Mr. Schiavone?
Thank you. Schools are becoming the first point of delivery for social services. And I would say from the outset, it's imperative that our schools on the east end of Long Island are fully funded from the state of New York so that we can deliver those services. As far as school funding, the state of New York is looking at some of the smaller districts where they can hawk money, but we need those funds to deliver these social services for the very question that you ask. In addition to that, I believe that our police have a role and our court systems have a role as well. I am a firm believer in treatment courts. I believe that when people get into the system, that we should get them the help that they need. Treatment courts, whether it's juvenile drug courts or other courts, these are courts where folks, when they come into the court system, they essentially plead to the highest charge pending the completion of various programs. And then the court systems get these programs to the individuals so that they can straighten their lives out. We want healthy human beings. We want people who are, I don't know, living right, flying right, and, they have to break the cycle of addiction. And that is incredibly difficult to do. As a legislator in Albany, I would support drug courts. I would also support our police department and the training that's needed for this type of interdiction, and also for fully funding our schools.
Mr. Kiley?
I support Tommy John in that. I think drug treatment courts are imperative, but we also have to address bail reform. You can have a drug dealer that possesses enough fentanyl to kill 114,000 people, and a judge cannot keep him in jail on monetary bail. You're arrested on that charge, the person just leaves court. So we desperately need bail reform to be part of this puzzle to fix this problem.
Okay. The next question is for Mr. Schiavone first. We would like to hear your position on preserving reproductive rights in the state of New York and the nation. And also, would you please talk about your stance on the ERA?
Certainly. Well, I support the Equal Rights Amendment. I will be voting for it. It seems to, and as far as reproductive rights, to me, those are absolute. Reproductive rights are between a woman and her doctor, period. And the Equal Rights Amendment and reproductive rights are closely connected to one another. I'm happy that we are putting this forward, but I have to say I'm a little disappointed that in the federal government, we overturned Roe v. Wade. We had Supreme Court justices that went before Senate and said that it was settled law, and then they overturned Roe v. Wade. So I fully support it. I have a daughter. I have other people in my family that and friends and community members. These are their rights. It is in the penumbra of the 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and it's just absolute for me.
Mr. Kiley?
I agree with Tommy John regarding the Supreme Court decision was flawed. I believe in stare decisis, that once it was decided by the Supreme Court and our country has lived with it, that became the law. And so I'm a Roe guy. I'm fully supportive of that. And whatever we have to do to solidify that in the state of New York, I'm fully supportive of. I am not voting on the ERA. I think it is written so vaguely that it's trying to address other issues other than the right of abortion. It is written in a way that you can allow unauthorized migrants to vote. You can allow biological boys to compete in girls' sports. You can allow transgender surgeries without parental permission. So I'm very concerned about the way it's written. If it was written tighter with just regarding abortion, that would be one thing. But the way it is written has so many consequences potentially that would negatively impact the state that I'm not supportive of it. And I would tell everyone not to vote yes on
that. Okay. Sticking with Mr. Kiley, what about immigration in our area? So many of our businesses and farms rely on immigrant labor. Do you think that there is legislation that needs to be passed on this issue in the state? And what do you think of the state position on being a sanctuary?
Thank you for this question. I believe that we should rescind the sanctuary state status immediately. All that the sanctuary state status does is protect the criminal migrant. It does nothing for anyone else who wants to come here, raise a family, wants to work here, does nothing. What it does is it prohibits our local police department and our judges from communicating with federal authorities upon arrest or conviction of a criminal migrant, even if there's a warrant for their deportation. So I would immediately seek to rescind the sanctuary state status and pass legislation that would require our local police departments to work with the federal authorities to deport criminal migrants. They do not belong here. Additionally, we have this green light law that gives driver's licenses to criminal migrants that have warrants for their deportation, because our DMV is not allowed to communicate with federal authorities. So this has to change. All that being said, I know our small businesses rely on it, but I'm not talking about those migrants that are here. I'm talking about just the criminal migrants that need to be deported yesterday.
Mr. Schiavone.
Certainly. We have a 0% unemployment environment out here on the East End. We have a labor shortage, and we have one in the United States. There's a reason why people are coming to this country, and it's important. We are a nation of immigrants, and as far as immigration and immigration issues, I have to say that this is an incredible failure of our federal government. Congress has not made a law since Ronald Reagan was president on immigration. So a lot of these issues are falling to local governments and states to figure these things out. And I would call on our congressmen and our senators to really get together and write a comprehensive immigration law. It seems like every year we are discussing this, and every year during election season, this issue comes up because really, one particular party, I believe, doesn't necessarily want to solve this. They want to run on it. And as far as New York being a sanctuary state, the key issue here is whether or not we have administrative warrants or not. Now, in the United States, a warrant is issued by a judge in a court, not an administrative warrant. And very often the warrants for deportation these are what are called administrative warrants that come from a particular agency to do whatever they're doing. And in New York State, we have rejected the concept of administrative warrants because we believe in checks and balances of the US and New York Constitution. If they want a warrant, get one from a judge. Don't get it from some administrator. So that is the sum and substance of what sanctuary is in this country. So you know what? I believe that we should do that. And certainly immigration reform is something that all of the states need, and this country needed years ago. Let's get it done. Let's not kill the bill because it's a good political point during an election. Thank you.
Mr. Kiley?
Yeah, so he's trying to muddy the waters here and talk about the federal issue. We're talking about the sanctuary state. Now, illegal migrants are not considered criminals, so there's no real judicial warrants for deportation unless there's a crime committed. And even then, they have to defer to hearing officers and magistrates. So I had a case 2 weekends ago where a gentleman had a criminal warrant signed by a judge for the commission of a violent felony in another state, and the judge could not enforce the warrant and call ICE to pick him up because he was already threatened by a taxpayer-funded immigration group that would violate state law in the sanctuary state. We got to get rid of it because the border states are sending migrants here in an unsustainable level because we are a sanctuary state to the tune of $2.4 billion in this upcoming budget of taxpayer money to fund the migrant crisis in New York City. And that's not counting the $2.5 billion of the previous year. So we're spending a ton of money because of the sanctuary state status that just protects criminal migrants.
Okay. The next question was
Judy, he has.
rebut. Go ahead.
Thank you. If they commit crimes, they're criminals. And there could be a criminal warrant and it should come from a judge, period.
Okay. Okay. The next question, starting with Mr. Kiley. The Shinnecock Nation are proceeding with their plans and the construction of a large gas station on the westbound lane of Highway 27. Residents are complaining vigorously, and the Shinnecock are holding to their plans. What do you think of this, and what, if anything, would you do about it in the assembly?
To me, again, this is a home rule local control issue. This isn't something that the state should be getting involved with. This is a sovereign nation dealing with the township. However, the way the state has injected himself into this controversy is by not allowing them to apply for curb cuts onto the highway. Therefore, it'll have to be, the traffic will be rerouted through a residential community. That's abhorrent. The state should not hold that against the nation because they're having a fight regarding the monument issue and saying, we're not going to talk to you about the curb cuts, thus putting the communities at risk surrounding the proposed gas station. So again, I think this is an issue to be dealt with between the town and the sovereign nation, and the state should do their job and do their ministerial job of evaluating whether curb cuts should go onto the highway.
Okay, Mr. Schiavone?
Sure. Okay. A lot to unpack here. And as a member of the Southampton Town Board, we are currently involved in this. And I have to say that in Southampton Town, we actually zoned that area INDRES back in 2004, and that predated 2010 when the nation got their federal recognition. So they are moving forward with their gas station, and I would say that as a legislator in the New York State Assembly, I would push to make sure that they had access to the Sunrise Highway. That highway is actually on a covenant, an easement that goes over the land of the nation that was put in there, back in the 1950s. So, this is going in, and I believe that the state does have a role to play in this area so that they can get the access to the highway. And I believe that people want this travel plaza in place. I know the neighbors are not necessarily particularly happy with this, which I certainly understand, and we're working with them on these issues, but the state does have a role as the state highway, or it's a county, Sunrise Highway, goes across their land. So the state is going to, be a major player in this development. And I also support the Shinnecock and their economic development initiatives for their nation, for a myriad of reasons. As a teacher in the Santa Maria School District, I've had students who were from the Poospatuck Reservation. And as a councilman in the town of Southampton, I've worked with the nation on many different levels. And, I'm happy that they are willing to develop themselves in a way that's going to protect their future generations.
Okay. Next question, sticking with Mr. Schiavone. The CPS fund has been extraordinarily successful. raising over $2 billion since 1999. In its current form, CPF is used for purchase of open land and for help preserving historical structures. There are many calls for expanding the use of these funds for other efforts that benefit the community that would include capital expenditures on approved projects. What do you think of this, and would you work in the Assembly on such a modification of CPF?
Well, I would say that the mission of the Community Preservation Fund is not done. And really, it was identified for open space and for farmland originally. We still have plenty of farmland and we still have plenty of open space. And this was really the vision of our current Assemblyman, Fred Thiel. And, he got this through, as well as our senator at the time, Ken Laval. It was visionary, and it's now a tool that the towns can use, to preserve open space and historic structures. There is a lot of work still to do as far as that's concerned. In addition to that, we mentioned water quality projects, and we've created a 20% set aside in the Community Preservation Fund for water quality. If there is any change in the Community Preservation Fund, I believe that change should be towards water quality initiatives. I've worked with Fred Thiel on this and a number of other initiatives. I'm proud to be endorsed by him in this race. It really is, one of the great honors for me to be endorsed by Fred. And you know what? I've spoke to him about this many times. And moving forward, I could see changing the water quality percentage, because really the Peconic Bay estuary system is a system that is at risk. Now, Southampton Town and East Hampton Town, our community preservation funds are quite healthy. However, if you go to Shelter Island, South Holden, Riverhead, it's a different situation over there. So their needs are going to be different than the needs, and available monies on the South Fork as well. But there is room to change. But I wouldn't want the Community Preservation Fund to go into capital projects of the town. That was not the intent of this. It was to preserve the East End for future generations, and that is what I plan to do as your assemblyman.
Mr. Kiley?
I echo Tommy here. I agree that capital projects should not be funded by the CPF, and also I think the CPF program was Fred Thiel's crowning achievement. There actually is an amendment pending right now. It's on the governor's desk for signature, that greatly enhances what you can do for water quality. Right now, it's really strict in the definition as to what you can use that up to 20% on, and now it's going to be very broad, which is great news. There's also going to be a opinions bureau or advisory board to the CPF, so municipalities can seek, because there is a lot of wiggle room in the law, and to see what you can and can't do. But I mentioned this previously, that I would want the 20% to go up to 50% for water quality. I think that's in desperate need at this point, and we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can preserve open space, preserve farmlands, while at the same time addressing our nitrate issue in the water.
Okay. Sticking with you, Mr. Kiley, slightly different issue. Residents of the East End have only one choice for cable and internet. Optimum has a monopoly in our area, and their service and price leave a lot to be desired. What can be done at the state level to bring prices down and provide more choice?
Well, thank God for streaming services, right? So we do have that option now, but you're right. As far as internet service, it's really the only game in town. I think there's Starlink, which I've never used before. So Optimum is governed by the franchise law. Optimum enters into franchise agreements with each different municipality, but it's also governed by the FCC. So right now, there's no impediment for a competitor to come to the East End and challenge Optimum and provide some competition. So there's nothing to change in the law per se, but we just need to make it more attractive to other competitors to come out here. I don't know how we would do that, but I would work towards that because I feel your pain. I think there should be competition on the East End, but I think that as technology changes and increases, I think we'll be able to get some of that competition because I know people up the island have FiOS and other things. So I'm all about that.
Mr. Schiavone.
Thank you. You know, these franchise agreements out here is, you know, it's a geographic monopoly, and in this country we kind of bristle at monopolies. So I would certainly like to, you know, explore options for other services to come into the area. But we need to understand a little bit of what the towns get from this. And the town of East Hampton, for instance, you know, we get a considerable amount of funding. In the town of Southampton, we fund our entire youth bureau off of this franchise agreement, and we run great programs for kids. In addition to that, we have a robust grant program. We literally take the monies that we get from Optimum and we give it out to grants, whether it's Hamlet grants or community service grants or cultural grants. You know, we give it out about $1,000, $1,500 at a time for various groups inside our community. And they find that these grants are incredibly important. But you know, having said that, I believe that we can operate our grant program and still explore other franchises like, you know, FiOS, like Steven said, or Comcast. Because
Okay.
you're right, Optimum service, and you know, one of the things that gets me is how they hung their wires. They just bundled them up and wrapped them, and they didn't do a great job, and they're hanging down in lots of places. I'm constantly calling them on that, and then they go out and they, you know, string them back up again. So they could be doing a better job with that.
Okay, so we're up to our last question before we get to the closing statements. And the last question, starting with Mr. Schiavone, how will you communicate with residents of the district?
Excellent question. You know, of course, social media, you know, we're all on social media, yeah, as elected officials, that's one thing. But I am a believer of public meetings and showing up. And you know what? I have a lot of fantastic mentors in my background: Bridget Fleming, Tim Bishop, and Fred Thiel. Fred Thiel was everywhere. And, you know, I plan on, as your assemblyman, I plan on doing the same thing, you know, going to different community events all of the time. Now, it's going to be important that we give updates as far as legislative updates. But I think social media also could be used, like I said earlier, as a way to communicate en masse to our constituents. Now, as far as my office hours, you know, I still believe in being able to walk into a government official's office and sitting down and speaking to them. So I fully plan to have that option as well. So it's an excellent question, and communication is absolutely imperative. In addition to that, communicating with our local school boards and school administrations, our town boards, town administrations, and our villages as well is going to be imperative, especially during budget season when it's going to come down to these critical state funds that are needed by our towns and especially our school districts. They're the ones that know what we need, and they're the ones that are going to communicate to us. As far as state monies and having a partner on the state level, it's going to be imperative that we have someone in Albany who has had the experience of being in village government, town government, school district as well. And I have that experience, and I know, you know, that where I need to go to communicate with those folks, and vice versa. You know, getting grant funds for various things for town governments, whether it's shoreline resiliency or school districts for increased funding, they need to know that they have someone in Albany, in the majority, who can deliver for them on the local level. So communication is absolutely imperative. And thank you for the question.
Mr. Kiley?
I agree with that as well. To foster communication with my constituents, I will be omnipresent at community events, hold town hall meetings on a regular basis. And I think what else also is key is having great staff, having people that are always going to be answering the phones and are responsive to constituents and are able to get in touch with me, and we can have direct responses. Also, you want someone who can foster relationships. And throughout my career, I've fostered relationships with the federal government, with federal representatives, state government, state representatives, county, town, village. In my role as a municipal attorney, I have done that, and I've worked with all of them. So I think that would be great to be able to foster those relationships to the benefit of the constituents.
Okay, so closing statements now. Mr. Kiley, you go first. 1 minute.
All right. My opponent and I clearly have two different visions of the East End. Tommy John's, like Governor Hochul's, consists of potentially urbanizing the East End. The vision that I see is, high density housing complexes like the 50-unit Liberty Gardens project or the 80-unit Preserve and Quia, both of which he voted for, and industrial battery storage facilities smack dab in the middle of our communities, like the one he supports in Hampton Bays, and solar farms where forests once were. My vision, on the other hand, is housing in keeping with the existing small town community character and made more affordable through increasing accessory uses and repurposing, and the promotion of the growth and preservation of farmlands, woodlands, wetlands, and open space to do our part to address climate change naturally. I humbly ask for your vote to let me continue the good work of Fred Thiel, and like him, use my municipal law experience to ensure that the East End is not paved over with overdevelopment. Please allow me to be your common sense centrist voice to restore balance to Albany.
Thank you. Mr. Schiavone?
Good. Thank you. I'm running to keep what's good and to improve what needs to be made better for future generations. And I believe that I am uniquely qualified to serve the East End in the New York State Assembly, excuse me. And because of that, I've been endorsed by so many groups. And, I am proud to have the endorsement of the New York League of Conservation Voters, the New York State United Teachers, CSEA, the Civil Service Employees, as well as the AMA, SEIU. I have the endorsement of the nurses. And in addition to the environmentalists, I have the endorsement of the Building Trades Council as well. And in addition to those groups' endorsements, I also have the endorsements of East Hampton Town Supervisor Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, Southampton Town Supervisor Maria Moore, Southold Town Supervisor Al Krupski, excuse me, as well as new U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer and the current sitting member of the Assembly for over 30 years, Fred Thiel. And, I am proud of all of those endorsements, and I've been endorsed by the Southampton Town PBA as well. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this, and to Stephen for a good exchange of ideas tonight. And just please vote on the other side. We have propositions on the other side, and vote all the way to the end. Stephen and I will be on the end. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to thank Tommy as well. Thank you.
Okay.
And the League, of course.
Right. And the League would like to thank you both. And we'd like to thank C2V for recording this and for hopefully getting it on C2V's YouTube station as soon as they can, and perhaps letting people know about the little problem we had. It will be seen on your smart TV and computer. We wish you both luck on Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 5th. Early voting begins on October 25th and ends on November 3rd. And if you don't know your early voting location, please contact the Board of Elections to find it out. It's on their website. You just put in your zip code. And many local elections are won by very, very close margins. I mean, historically, we've had races won by 5 and 10 votes. So don't just vote for the top of the ticket. Get to those propositions, and remember, your vote counts. And thank you very much for joining us.